bum bum bottom 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 bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bum bottom ba da 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 ba da
You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Gullickson.
And I'm Brad Gullickson.
And each month we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. And in this episode, you listeners are just looking for a fight, which is fine with me, because I've got a buy one, get one special on knuckle sandwiches. Just roll up to my window and ask for the Get Wrecked Deluxe in our Creator Corner. We are chit-chatting with Kyle Starks about Karate Prom from First Second.
Lisa, have you ever thrown a punch in your life?
Dude, I am a deputy black belt in Taekwondo. Let us not forget.
I did forget that. Did you ever apply those skills out of the classroom?
Never once.
Never once.
And I started Taekwondo in kindergarten, and so I got most of my belts through crying, which I have applied to the rest of my life.
Can you imagine a scenario in which you would throw a punch?
No, not a punch. It just doesn't seem natural to me. I might kind of throw my body.
Can you make a fist right now for me?
Meh. Look at that
your
little
thumb
thing.
is inside your knuckles.
No, it's not.
No,
it's not.
Okay, no, you're right. Okay. So you.
I know that much.
Okay,
and who makes a fist like this?
I mean, that's how I had to be taught that.
Really?
To take the thumb out. I had to take the thumb out of the fist.
Oh, that's weird.
I believe I was taught that by my father because,
He wanted to make sure he was a Navy man. Got to make sure
your
your soft son can scrap.
That's right. He's seen some Lee Marvin and John Wayne movies. Sometimes you got to throw a punch. Although I haven't thrown a punch since 5th grade.
That's right.
I am sorry, Felix.
He had it coming.
I mean, maybe he did. In my child logic, I had deemed him a bully. But, I have such little access to that kid that I was. Maybe I had it coming. I honestly really don't know at this point. I do know that the principal let me off the hook and told me that he did have it coming.
Yeah.
So, when a principal's like, yeah, violence, it worked out for you this time, kid. You were on the right side, right?
Right.
It's sort of funny because I have no relatability to this comic at all. I did not take karate as a child. My mom took me to a karate class, and I looked at it through the window of the shopping mall, and then I was like, no thanks, and we went back home. And I never went to prom. That was a high school experience that I also rejected. And while I don't really regret missing out on karate or taekwondo or the martial arts, I mean, I have Jeet Kune Do fantasies as a Bruce Lee stan. I do regret not partaking in the prom experience. I was so shy. I really couldn't engage with those cultural landmarks. You grow up, and when you're real young and you're watching things like The Goonies and The Breakfast Club, and you see what high school and teenage life is like, and you go okay, I'm going to have to become something like Judd Nelson in The Breakfast Club. That's just going to happen. And then when you get to high school and that doesn't happen, and your high school experience isn't like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I was just confused by it all. And all of those rites of passage moments, getting a driver's license, going to the big game, going to proms, I just did not engage.
I relate to what you were saying so hard, but the way that I categorize rites of passage, I didn't know what that feeling was, so I just kind of put it all under the umbrella of embarrassment and humiliation. I just didn't like the idea of going to my parents and saying, a boy asked me to prom and now we got to buy a dress. Like, I hated the idea of my mom and dad thinking about me being with a boy or whatever.
Yeah, but a boy did ask you. You did go to prom.
I did. I went to prom with a date my sophomore year, and it was so tremendously uncomfortable for me. I just remember that feeling of like, you know, just being nervous to the point of feeling like full of bees the whole time. And I really wish I could just tell like high school Lisa to just like chillax. This literally doesn't matter. And the less you treat it like it doesn't matter, the more special the experience would be.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the great advice that I think many people would say to their younger selves? You know, when you're growing up, and especially when you hit high school, again, because when you're a kid, culturally, high school is such a big deal and college is such a big deal. And you have only lived such a small period of time. Like, high school feels like this momentous, catastrophic, apocalyptic thing. And I think we would all want to go back in time and say, like, yo, this is 4 years. You're going to spend more time working retail than doing this, my friend.
The fact of the matter is, you are going to keep those memories for the rest of your life. Brad and I are different in that I remember my childhood and my teenagerhood extremely well.
Yeah, and I've done a great job erasing it.
To the point where, like, Brad can hear me across the apartment just randomly go like, ugh. You know what I mean? Just like, oh, God.
And I'll be like, what's wrong?
And I'm like, I'm thinking about the past. But, like, I have a handful of key memories about that prom, one of which I share with Kyle Starks, which was a memory that I carried with me with such tremendous shame. I remember waiting a long time to tell my mom that I had a date to prom and that I needed a dress because of the aforementioned, like, embarrassment and humiliation. And Mom was like, wow, cool, let's go to the mall. But all of the dresses in my size were gone, except for one dress that looked suspiciously like a wedding dress. I kept telling myself, like, no, it's silver, because it had some kind of like sheen to it, but it looked like a wedding dress. And then I remember my dad saying in a very straightforward manner to my date, I have to be home by 1, which was really embarrassing to me.
And did you get home by 1?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I did.
What would have happened if you had not gotten home by 1?
My parents would be mad at me.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, nothing would have happened. And my senior prom, I just went with a bunch of friends, and I did stay out super late. I think I stayed out until like 4 a.m, and my mom was pissed. She was upset with me. But those were much better memories.
The second prom.
The second prom, my senior prom. I also remembered that the first thing that happened getting into the car with my date, a huge fly, like an enormous fly, the size of like my thumb, got stuck underneath the like sheer layer of my dress and was just angry, buzzing around in there. So the first thing we had to do as a couple was free this humongous fly out of the netting of my dress, which could be a really funny and cute story, but because I was full of bees, like, it was just like, oh my goodness. I was like, please, world, just open up. I want to feel the lava of your insides. I could not take it. I could not take it.
But you survived it.
I did.
And now it remains within you as a squidgy memory. And to some degree, I'm jealous of your squidgy memory because I don't have anything like that. I believe, and again, you know, my access to my memories around this moment. Like, I remember that a girl did ask me out, but again, because of my shyness, I could not possibly imagine going to prom or going on a date. I went on no dates in high school. I said, thanks, but no thanks to her. And she's doing great now, by the way. I think I just took that night as a movie night. I believe I went to the theater and watched a film. I don't know what that film would have been, but that's the shadowy memory that I have.
Even though I did not allow myself to have a good time at that prom, and even talking about it now, it fills me with such a like a present discomfort. Honestly, I can feel the anxiety like in my chest and like going up the right side of my face. I'm like burning with like, oh God, that poor kid. I wouldn't give back those memories. I wish that I could just find the way to make those memories a little bit warmer. One thing that struck me in this conversation with Kyle Starks is that we kind of assume that if somebody is into comic books and is a comic book nerd, that they had a similar high school hood as us.
Right.
Like, we just assume, oh, clearly you are a child of the basement. You know what I mean? You didn't go on dates and you didn't go to prom. Instead, you became an artist. You're a creative, and creatives are little weirdos like us. When we were in elementary school, it was fairly regular for like a cop to come in and talk to all of the kids like, hey, when you go to high school, people are going to offer you drugs and people are going to offer you sex and all of this stuff. There's going to be all of this tremendous peer pressure. And you have to like be so strong and confident in yourself to not succumb to those temptations. And then I got to high school and I didn't experience any peer pressure at all. Like, nobody ever offered me alcohol or anything. I didn't even get my opportunity to practice my just say no. But I knew that these other kids were living this entirely invisible to me but parallel high school experience that was way more like a John Hughes movie than my experience. And that's Kyle Starks. I feel like he did achieve that Judd Nelson status that we never got to.
Yeah, and when you listen to this conversation and we go excavating into Kyle's past and we're looking for his prom experience, you can hear us get disappointed that he didn't have the shy, sad prom experience that Lisa and I had.
Which is totally fine because it gave us a book like Karate Prom. You'd think off the dome, Kyle Starks would not be a good fit for YA books because of books like Old Head and Sex Castle, where he has this really over-the-top sense of humor that is considered adult. Hear my huge quotes into the microphone. But to me, YA and Kyle Starks is a really beautiful fit because Kyle Starks is so heart forward. Karate Prom centers around this really adorable high school couple, Dawn, the Dragon Wilson Jones, and Sam, short for Samantha Stedman, that meet at a karate competition. Dawn finally gets up the nerve to invite her to prom, and she enthusiastically agrees, but her jerky karate ex-boyfriend has other ideas. So we get to see Dawn and Sam kick, punch, and fight their way through prom, the after party, and into true love.
And the structure is kind of interesting, right? Because the book was initially created during the pandemic, during lockdown, and the first section of the story is what Kyle Starks offered as a digital free comic book day. And then when he pitched this and it was accepted by First Second Books, his publisher, he then built off of that first short story. And so it almost operates like an anthology. Kyle has had an incredible run of late working on books like Marvel Unleashed and Peacemaker Tries Hard and I Hate This Place. We had him on the podcast to talk about I Hate This Place a couple years ago. But for me, when he illustrates his own stories, like those are event comics, and we really want the comics reading community to take note when one does arrive. Special bonus because Kyle is such a great podcast guest. He's always a good time. Before we get to our conversation with him, though, Lisa, we have to do some
referrals.
Sponsored by Omnibus. Omnibus is a modern digital comic book store and reader app carrying your favorite single issues, volumes, and omnibuses all day and date. Just like your local comic book store, you pay per book, but digital.
Their focus is on building an excellent customer shopping and reading experience and using novel discovery features to help fans find their next new favorite book. They feature top-tier content and already have many of the top publishers in comics today.
So in the spirit of helping people find their next new favorite book, we have our referrals segment. The idea is to give our counselees, that's you guys, further reading on the themes of the episode. Think of it as us sending you to specialists to further your healing journey through comic books. And as of this week, Omnibus has launched its hotly anticipated Android iteration.
Pew, pew, pew.
It is also available on iPhone, and if you have a browser, you also have access to Omnibus. It's just that simple.
One of the themes I got out of Karate Prom is this idea that when someone loves you, your problems are not a burden on them. At one point, Sam considers breaking up with Dawn because their relationship keeps putting him in karate danger. And it reminded me of another book that is available on Omnibus, and it is Mooncakes. Mooncakes, which is from artist Wendy Xu and writer Suzanne Walker from Oni Press, is about this teenage witch who works in her grandmother's bookshop and investigates supernatural occurrences in their small New England town. And one night she hears this report of this white wolf in the woods. And when she goes to find that wolf, she actually runs into her childhood crush, who seems to be in conflict with this demon. And through the investigation, she finds out that her crush had been avoiding her because they didn't want their magical conflicts to ruin her life. Mooncakes is a queer YA romance that I think any young person can get into. It's super aspirational, it's warm and fuzzy, and the art by Wendy Xu is just so cute.
Have not read that, Lisa? Need to read that, obviously. For my referral, I was looking at the action as it was choreographed in Karate Prom and looking for something a little bit similar. And this may be a little bit of a stretch, but I am going to recommend Christian Slade's Corgi, which was this epic fantasy involving a corgi dog.
Into it.
That came out in the mid-aughts in several chapters. And this year, through Top Shelf, they have collected all of those chapters into one epic volume. It's sort of like the one-volume version of Bone. So you could just plow through this entire fantasy adventure. It's a wordless comic, and you know I am a giant sucker for those. And it is filled with a lot of whimsy, a lot of fantastical characters. Like the corgi at the center of this story looks like corgis you'll see here on Earth and in our realm, but its realm is very different. It is a little bit Tolkien, and it comes from a town where corgis are revered, and there are many corgis, and corgis are seen to be magical. And it gets lost with its young friend, a little girl named Molly, and they encounter a spider cave, and they get trapped in it. And once they get trapped in the spider cave, they are propelled on a series of adventures.
Sounds amazing. You had me at corgi, but then everything else was just like, oh my goodness, this sounds so cute.
It's super cute, but again, the action and the way that Christian Slade can communicate movement and violence for a YA crowd, maybe even more of an all-ages crowd, did remind me a little bit of Kyle Starks. And I just think it's a great opportunity here in our referrals to highlight a book that I thought had gone away from the comics culture conversation. But no, it's back thanks to Top Shelf and in this beautiful thick volume. And there is an added chapter that is just for 2024 audiences. So both of these books, Mooncakes and Corgi, are available through Omnibus. It is a comic book store, but digital. You can go to it through your Android, through your iPhone, through your browser, and just start browsing like you would at any other comic book store, and create a wish list, which is basically like creating your own pull box, and start buying comic books.
Referrals.
Now let's bring Kyle Starks into our love nest so we can talk about Karate Prom, which is out now from First Second Books. We don't get too spoilery in this conversation. You don't necessarily have to have read Karate Prom to enjoy this chat with Kyle, but also it wouldn't hurt. In fact, it would help.
For example, in this conversation, I mentioned spaghetti arms, which you are not going to understand until you see this totally hilarious visual joke.
So you've been properly lubricated and enticed. You're going to either buy the book or you've already read the book, and you're ready to listen to our conversation with Kyle Starks. Kyle, welcome back to Comic Book Couples Counseling. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I like being here. This is a nice place to be.
Yeah. So we're going to get like real personal and serious immediately. We need to know your prom experiences.
Did you prom?
I promed a lot. I went as a freshman. Can't do that here. Junior and seniors only. Sophomore, you better believe it. And then I think I did like 4 more. I was very popular. Not popular, just I was charming with the ladies.
So, and you had a great time. You enjoyed all your proms.
I did. I tell you what, I think I actually, of all those proms, I think I only spent any time at one of them. I think mostly the others were show up, take a picture, and then go do post prom thing,
My
which did not
prom
make the book. The adult stuff, the adult stuff. I remember we had Zimas for one. I had some guys at my work get a 6-pack of Zimas.
Whoa,
You remember Zima?
I do.
What a player! What a little player he
Wow.
was. Bringing Zimas
Wow.
to the party, guys.
I don't know what I was expecting, but I was not expecting Zimas, and I was not expecting such prom enthusiasm for some reason.
I love prom. I didn't, but you know what? I didn't like. I don't like people in general. I did not like groups of people, but I like spectacle. I like celebrations, and I like celebrations of love. And I like to dance a little bit. But I found generally prom was not playing music that was my aesthetic. So it was a lot of show up, get some daps. Let's let's get out of here now. We got dressed up. We looked up. I loved a dress up. I love a fancy occasion. But I would say the actual prom experience itself was not for me.
I know, Lisa, you went to some proms.
Yeah, my prom
Lisa went to a
experience.
bunch.
No, I peaked early. I got asked to prom my sophomore year, and I
Upperclassmen.
went, and I was so tremendously shy. I grew up in a very like conservative household, so I was not allowed to do anything, and I was also an upholder. So like one of my cringe memories was the guy going like, "Do you want to go make out?" And I
Right.
responded, "I don't know how." And then we
That's fair.
didn't. And then I got home by curfew, and we never spoke again. And
Mhm.
then my
Well, you did
junior,
warn him.
I don't know how.
You
And
warned
he
him.
said,
You warned him.
yeah, yeah. And he's like, that sounds like a boundary to me. I will not push it. And I'm like, what a
Oh, okay.
gentleman. Let's never make eye contact.
That's probably high school appropriate. I will say, I think like I'm a big proponent of like I think there are events happen in our lives that sort of shape like future. Too much information. I'm kind of weird about denim miniskirts. Thank you, Kelly Kapowski. Look, I can draw the line, right? But my first prom was with a junior girl, obviously, and they got a limo. They got a limo. And so I feel like there was like it was heightened. I never got another limo. There was another limo after that, but I think there was something heightened about the experience. And I tell you, I brought a cassette because it was a long time ago. I wish I could remember what cassette it was. I left it in the limo. I remember I was like, oh, I left my blank Slayer. Who knows what it was? I don't know what it was. I left my blank cassette in the limo, and I was pretty miffed about it. But I think
Aw.
though I was like, I had such a good experience, even though we didn't do anything, even though nothing happened. I was like, oh, I love this. These are things I now like. So they were all enjoyable. I love dances. I loved all of them. So that's probably part of like, I mean, the title wasn't mine for karate prom. I did like a poll. I famously did a poll, but it's like to me, I'm like, who wouldn't like this? I love proms and I love karate. Like just the title alone. I think titles are hard. I think titles are hard, guys, because you want the title to sort of ask a question or to go, that sounds cool, right? And I'm not always very good at that because I'm really a story first guy, and I think some auteur directors are like, you have to have a great title first, and I'm like, I don't know, the book's good. It'll so like I like Pine and Merrimack, which is my book right now, but like Pine and Merrimack to me just has like a nice rhythm to it. It doesn't say anything, but it's like, oh, that's what is Pine and Merrimack? Maybe. I hate this place. Asks a question. It says, why do these people hate this place? I want to know why. But I think karate prom, who doesn't it's karate prom. Who's going, I don't think that interests me. It's someone who has no joy in their heart. It's someone who has no whimsy in their soul. I like karate and I like proms. Let's put them together. It's like a Reese's Pieces cup.
Yeah, and I think, when taking in everything you've said about your prom experience and then now fitting that into the karate prom experience that we just had reading it, the book is pretty joyous about the event despite the interruption of a lot of karate.
There's a lot of karate interruptions. There's not probably enough dancing for most people.
So we know it became karate prom because of a poll that you put out there, and
Yes.
the people demanded karate prom, and then you delivered karate prom as a free comic book day event during the lockdown time. How did it then get to first, second, and then become this much bigger experience in the book that now exists?
Yeah, for sure. I did karate prom over the pandemic during the shutdown. There wasn't free comic book that year, and I thought, I don't know, man. I thought we needed it. I thought everybody needed it, and I thought I'll just do something for free. It'll be 8 pages. I'll just do like a quick nothing. I'll let these people give me a title. There's no pressure, it'll just be a nothing, and they'll go, "That's nice that we got something." But I had Twitter. I think I did it on Twitter, and I was like, "Give me titles." Chris Schweitzer, who colored the book, gave me Karate Prom. That's not favoritism. Karate Prom is the best title anyone's ever given anything. And I had in 10 days I did 36 pages or 32 pages in 10 days. I lost my mind. I was so happy. I was drawing a comic book again, which I haven't done. I hadn't done in a while and haven't done since, except for the next year. Um, I just like, man, I love this and I love these characters. So when I finished Karate Prom, I was so still like sort of on that high that I did two more chapters. I did Karate after party and I did Karate graduation. And I thought, because I did them so quickly, and they were 45 pages. I think it's another 90 pages. I did them so quickly, I couldn't just release them the same. I was like, I'll figure something out with them. And I thought what I would probably do is what I've always done, which is just do a Kickstarter. I'll do a Kickstarter and then find someone else who will print it. But because it was ostensibly all ages, I think it's all ages. And I say that, I think it's for everybody. I think it's for everybody. Even kids who don't like Prom are kissing. They'd probably like this book too. I don't know, man. I was like maybe try the book market because it's an area I hadn't explored or had any involvement with. So I got an agent. He's great. He hooked me up with First Second. We spent however many years now, like extending it to 160. I think we added like 40 pages to what I originally had. And here we are. Here we are now on the cusp of it being a real thing. That's the story.
I love this story. I love this story. And I love the idea of a story coming easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where just
the best ones too.
Yeah, where you just have that momentum right away. When you were building out your cast, were you thinking about like people from your past? Is anybody like who went to high school with you in this book? No, not at all.
No, that's a bunch of nerds. That's a bunch of hapless nerds. No, I don't know. I think there is some tropes. There's some tropiness to it. But I think for sure with these sort of no pressure things, like I sort of go back to characters. I love a guy who always gets back up. It's one of my favorite tropes. It's in most of my books that someone gets back up. Maybe not quite as much as Don does. I love an unearned competence character. Because these are things I think, it's always like, oh, the art's the artist in many ways. Like, I like to think that I don't quit and also like I'm confident for no good reason. But Sam is that, but Sam has every reason to be confident. And the variant of unearned confidence person is I like totally earned confidence person who's like, what is Sam not to have to be confident about? She's having a great time, but she's undefeatable in combat, and I think that's amazing. But I think she's also very fallible. So I like even with these new tropes, I put sort of new twisties on them. But there's no, I didn't go to no. I think it's a lot of probably 80s archetypes, if anything, that they all vaguely sort of represent. But it all came very organically. Like you said, the ones that just kind of happened. Because I mean, I had 10 days to do it. I had 10 days to do that first one. So these characters just were what they were going to be, and the sort of nice thing about doing more. I'm going to tangent real quick. I had a podcast the other day, and they're like, "Oh, do you ever think about doing like sequels to things like Sex Castle 2 or?" And I'm like, "No, I don't, because like I think I did the best story they have. Like, do those characters probably have more stories? Sure, but I think I did the best story they have." The Karate Prom was the exception. Like I made what I thought was the best story, and I was like, "Oh, there's two more." And by doing two more stories, like it fleshed everything out in a way that made everyone so much more interesting to me and so much more entertaining. So even like the henchmen in the first part of the story, by the end they have like sort of a little bitty arc, and it's like I love that. Like that's the stuff that I love, and ultimately, when we create things, that's what I aspire to do, is to make these things that I sort of wish exist in the world. And when I got my comps, I read it again. I'm like, oh, it's just what I wanted to be. Like I was like, I'll be able to read this 10 years from now and be like, oh, that was fun. That was a fun thing. I love that thing that I made. It has all the things that I like in it. So it's all very organic in terms of characters and all that stuff. And generally, just like you said, the best ones are that way. Where Monsters Lie was like that for me. I don't remember writing it. I just don't remember writing it. It's perfect. It's just like everything was inside of me. And I think about things a lot, obviously. Like it's not like I'm just like, merp, 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 and I hope the spirit guides me. But the best Peacemaker was that way. It's like the best ones are just like, I'm like, oh, I don't remember writing any of that. I don't remember writing any of that, even though it's the thing that I plotted out for it to be.
I feel like Don is like the best stand-in character because He's a nice guy. And his like number one downfall is that he doesn't really actually know how life works yet. And I
Mhm.
feel like for like a high school kid or a kid who's aspiring to be a high school kid, it's easy to like just like put themselves in Don's place and go like, hey, like he doesn't win every battle, but
Mhm.
at least things generally just like go his
And
way.
he's good natured,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
he's just like a nice guy.
He's like a
But
sweet little dummy.
yeah,
He's just
yeah.
doing the best he can. But I think he has all the traits. He has all the best traits you want someone to have. Like he always shows up. If you need help, like my wife once said when my dad died. Whoops. When my dad died, my wife said, like, you can tell who loves you by who shows up when you need them. Like that's it. And like my dad, she's like, oh, your dad always showed up. Like he wasn't. My dad wasn't great. That's not this conversation, but he would always show up when you needed help, right? And like Don's that. He's loyal. He sees the best in people. I think. I don't mean he cherry coats. I don't think
I
he
like
like
Yeah,
make
that. It
let's
should
yeah
be a thing. Cherry
he
coating,
does,
it's like
he
that's what's
does cherry
extra
coat.
delicious.
Yeah, he doesn't make people good, but I think like even like his like Punchman's a villain to start, and I think even from the beginning he's sort of like, hey, I think he sees sort of the best in people, and believes like that's the version of them. He dated someone evil before he found out she was evil, um. Yeah, I like Don. I really like these characters a lot. I'm that's something that everyone should say about everything they write, but I don't know. Like they're great. I love Don and I love Sam and I love their friends and I don't know, I like all of them. There's no one I don't like in it. Even the bad guys I like.
I feel like I cherry coated things in high school in that I assumed everybody else was a virgin too. I just assumed it. I had no idea what was going on. But
It's probably a
like,
good percentage though.
I don't know. I hope
Mhm.
everybody turned out great. That's all I have to say about the people in
They're
high school.
I'm
Who was
gonna
in
I'm
high
gonna cherry
school with
coat
me.
that. I'm cherry coating that. They're all great. They're all having the best time.
But all of it, everybody turned out fine. Sometimes the hardest thing to tell like a kid who is in high school is the actual events that happen in high school matter so little,
Yeah.
but also the person you are in high school is going to somehow cast its shadow through your entire life. And sometimes I do worry about making things like prom or, other those kinds of events like, or,
homecoming,
homecoming
Mm.
graduation.
or the people who really cared
Santa
about
switch.
running for office, those
Yeah.
kids. Like, I do worry about making the high school things like too consequential. Like, do you have that concern?
No, but I think that's like the plot, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is going to go on your permanent record. You don't have a permanent record. Like
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
apply for your first job, they don't go 1 second, and they reach into a file drawer and it's like permanent record in a red stamp, and they're like, let's take a look and see what you've done. But I think that's like, I don't know, man. As a parent, like, or as anything, it's like, what is the function of school? It's like we don't do driver's ed here anymore. Driver's
Oh,
ed
wow.
doesn't happen. I can't think of a more important thing to teach a child that everyone's gonna be. We should teach all of them how to drive. It's like it's always like, and I don't remember where I read this or heard this, but it's very true. Is like high school doesn't exist. All schools don't exist to actually teach you anything. They teach you how to be ready to have a job,
Mm-hmm.
to be calm for 8 hours, to do what you're told. Like that's really the function of it. And so it sort of changes. Well, that's true. I haven't used analytical geometry since high school. That's true. That's true. So yeah, it's listen. Maybe even as an adult, it's all inconsequential, right? Unless you do something awful. If you don't do anything awful, then it doesn't matter. But I do think it's interesting, like who you are in high school. Sort of, it sets up your ego. I think in
Yeah.
many ways, and I think that changes because I think some people after high school they have a bad experience and they go, that wasn't real, and you become a better person. But in many ways, I think that's setting a tone too. Because you go, I don't want to have that experience in my life again. Um, I don't know. High school was like such a goof for me. Like I don't, and I know that's a sort of a privileged singular experience, but like I don't remember ever going to a class. I only remember like lunch. You know what I mean? Like I don't remember any of it. It worked out great. Uh, so I have fond memories of high school, but I also think of it as like a weird construct I wasn't a part of in many ways. Like it was a social experiment that I was like I was just there. That's what it is. It's a social experience experiment. That's all it is. Where the
Yeah,
government's keeping tracks on it. It's all vaults and fallout.
I feel like the further I get away from high school, the less I remember. And that could just be, my deteriorating brain. Although like Lisa's the opposite,
Yeah.
where she remembers all of her teachers, all of her friends. I was trying to remember my teachers the other day, and they're all gone from my head except for like a
Yeah,
handful of them. Um,
yeah. You'd have to get the yearbook out. I have no idea. I
yeah,
have
and
no idea. I like my two BFFs. I mean, you had like I and like I those like name 10 people. I was like, oh, I'll have to get the book out. Like I only know two. I know there was a bunch. There was, but they were underclassmen. Like I have to, underclassmen, you only kind of sort of pay attention to. You know what I mean? So it's like I'd have to look. But it's like someone the other day was like, "Do you remember this teacher?" And I was like, why would I? Like I remember my art teacher. I remember my art teacher, one English teacher. I mean, literally, I could like. There was one guy. There was one teacher who I found it was one of my friend's dad. They had the same last name. Like, why didn't I put that together? It's just like, who gave it crap? You know what I mean? I think almost everything I do is probably genre tropes. I know there's like a couple times that I've had experiences. People like, oh, you should make a comic out of that. I used to work with this guy when I had a normal job before I was wildly successful, like I am now in my unfinished basement. Before I made comics for a living. And this guy sucked. He was awful, and I used to tweet about him all the time. People were like, "Oh, you should make a comic about that guy." And I'm like, I have to, I experience it. Like I don't want to experience it twice. Like I'm venting, and so I think almost like with all of my stuff, I mean, again, the art is the artist. I don't think that's unless you're doing like documentaries or something. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to avoid like everything is a piece of you. It's a piece of people you know. It's a piece of your experiences. But it's like I'm telling stories. Like I'm not doing autobiographical stuff. Like I don't have an if my blankets would be boring. But blankets are kind of boring. That's neither here nor there. But I would say it's like I don't have nothing's interesting. Anything that's interesting happens to me is anecdotal. It's not a book. It's not a story. You know what I mean? So like, I'm not trying to. I mean, there's exceptions. Like Fuck Tarkington in Assassination is my best friend Chris Schweitzer. Like sometimes it is. Sometimes it is the thing because you're like that's hilarious. Um, that's hilarious. So sometimes you do it, and sometimes just being around someone so much flavors things. But I'm really more interested in story, and I'm so pop culture obsessed. Like that's going to be probably a bigger influence than anything else.
I do feel like when I read your comics, especially when I binge through your comics, I feel like your stories are stacking on top of each other, and they're like evolving into the next form. And I feel like Karate Prom in a lot of ways is an all ages sequel to Sex Castle. Like it's Sex Castle without the curses.
Yeah, I think it's my second book with no curses. I'm so proud of myself. It's technically my first one, but it came out second. I'm so proud of myself. Two books without the other one's Marvel Unleashed. Two books with no curses. I really did it. Um, yeah, I mean, there's just things you fall in love with. I think that are important. I do a lot of friendship and family, and this is very much about friendship. Um, I'm very much, and this predated. I hate this place. I think so. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
on my two people who just love the shit out of each other. Phase two with I hate this place and Karate Prom and Pine and Merrimack. It's like I like that. I like seeing people who like each other, and I like seeing people who really adore each other. I think it's there's a light in the world from stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, we call
so
it the
yeah, but
comic book couples counseling era.
yeah, hitmen. We love hitmen. We love dogs. We love guys who don't give up. Like it's kind of I have like themes, and a smarter writer would be like, you should probably do less of those. You make the thing you want to exist in the world, though. I say, and I think those are all things that have like many different ways to sort of explore. So
As a couple that just exclusively gets along, like we were bickering literally as Brad was hitting the button to start this interview, but we just enjoy each other's company so tremendously much that we go like, how can we do everything together? You know what I mean?
yeah,
We're those guys. We love to see it in books because it's just relatable for us.
And it is
that's
actually kind
awesome.
of rare,
Yeah, and
right?
it's
No,
super
it's
rare.
complete. I think representation. I feel like be careful how you talk, how, but I think representation is so important, and I can't like. So I always put a lot of POC characters. I put a lot of gay characters. I put handicapped characters because I look outside my window, and as a kid, everything is white people. But I feel the same way. It's like every couple, not every. I mean, generalizing, massive generalization. That so many couples are portrayed as like there has to be some problem, and there's some sort of because like it's all this everything we see like reflects upon us as a culture. And I'm not saying any of these books are changing anything, but like I like seeing. I don't want to see people fight. That's no fun for me. I hate it. It makes me like I can feel it in my chest. It's like why are they so mad? Why is he cheating on her? She's so sweet. I hate it. And so there's a lot of this is like I really like these couples, and it's because the ones that the people that I know, my wife's mom has a best friend, and I wish I could be those people. They're always happy. They're always like bantering with each other. You can just pop in, like you could just show up at their house and they're so excited. Someone just, interrupted whatever they're doing. I would die. I'd murder them. And like those are the people I love, though. It's like when you're like, man, they look and like the way they look at each other. I just like I love it, man. Like that's the best. So it's like making those characters and then yes, putting them in awful life or death situations. But like, man, I just like you like I said, you make the thing you want to exist, and I want to be around these people who are crazy about each other because I think that's one of the miracles of the human experience.
The character that I find myself really like,
Uh-huh.
rooting for weirdly
Uh-huh.
is Jake being the bully kid. I don't want to spoil it. Being
Luke.
the Luke?
Yeah, Luke. Jake is the friend.
Oh, excuse me.
Jake.
I'm
I was like,
terrible
I was
with
no,
names.
I am too. I had to look. I was like, oh my God, what did I do with Jake? Jake's good though.
I have my character list like right in front of me and I still mess it up.
Yeah, it's
And
okay. Luke starts out. He's your very traditional '80s blonde. You
yes.
would not want to go skiing with that guy. You would not want to be anywhere near that guy skiing.
But like he says something that is almost like reverse words of affirmation for me, where he says, thinking about the future is
Uh-huh. For
nerds
nerds.
who can't succeed in the present.
Yes.
And because I do think like being present is this thing that I feel like is overprized, where we go like, people who are truly enlightened really do live in the present.
In the
But
moment, sure.
yeah, but then he then has to deal with some real losses and some disappointment, and it is like tremendously crippling for him. And I know that you like to go to those 80s tropes, but I really do feel like you did a different twist on this
Yeah,
character.
you don't want to do the thing. I didn't think, how do you make it your own thing? Dude, I love that speech because I think like villain speeches are so hard, but I think like, because he basically says like, because he's like, Don says to him in 10 years, who will care? And he's like, only nerds worry about the future. Like, I'm great now. Basically, like, I'm going to do what I want to do now because the future doesn't, I'll still be great in the future. I love that speech as a villain speech, but also is like, think of the worst dude you knew in high school, and I promise you, he was not going. What do you mean 15 years from now? Like, who cares? I love that. That's one of my favorite bits. But yeah, he basically spoilers. Like, of course, the bully doesn't win, and because he lives in the moment, he's like, oh well, now I'm a loser. Which, oh, that's sad. I hope it turns around for him. It probably does. It
Yeah.
probably turns around for him. I like that because I reread it. Like there's like I said, there's something when it just happens. Is I reread it. There's a bit like Gail is sort of like the evil girlfriend, and she says something smarmy about Sam's dress, and she's like, you know what, Gail, I'd rather have a scuba full of farts than deal with you right now. And I'm like, I love that line. I think it's so funny. I wrote that line, and I think it's so funny.
It is a great
Yeah,
line.
it's so funny.
To me, I think a great approach to a villain speech is like, what's some pretty shallow advice that could just ruin someone's brain? So, like, going like, well, what's the dark side of live, laugh, love? You know what I mean? Somebody
Or
who's
like,
just living and laughing and loving all the time can be a real piece of shit. You know what I mean?
or like invest in NFTs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's a bad advice. Like, this is how villainy starts right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Karate Prom, because of its nature and the way that you created it, and it's like the first story and then two sequels.
Yeah.
You do allow for some without spoiling things, some like will they, won't they, like will they make it, won't they make it? You do
You gotta have
have
it.
that tension still.
Sure. Yeah, you gotta have it. You gotta put a little bit of doubt, but I didn't want to put like I said, I didn't want to put like where it's combative. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Even though there's a fight. But
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
was
like,
super worried, Kyle. Like when I got to that second chapter, I was like, no.
yeah. But you want to like you want the will that there has to be some conflict, but I didn't want it to be direct conflict. And I think like it's one of like, and I like how there's a time passage between the three chapters. And you can, to me, I think you can like sort of feel what just happened. Like you can sense it. I think that's so rewarding where you're like, oh, it's not jarring. You're like, as soon as you're like, oh yeah, that makes that makes sense. Now they're after party. Why wouldn't they be? I wonder what happened. They changed clothes. They went to after party. Come on, folks. You know what? You've been there. But yeah, they're a little will they won't they, which I like because they're clearly meant to be together. So it's like there's also like that mini mystery, like, oh, what happened? The very high school tea, right? Like, oh, what happened? Tell me more. I got to find out what happened here.
I have to talk a little bit about Don the Dragon Wilson Jones and the fact
Sure.
that his middle name is the Dragon Wilson. As a Don the Dragon Wilson fan, his middle name comes from his dad. His dad brought the love of fighting and karate into his life and raised him to be who he is. But the dad is a presence, not necessarily a figure in the story.
Yeah, you did the Charlie Brown adults thing.
Because it's not for adults. And in fact, if you physically see an adult, there's this thing I like doing a lot now in my stuff, and I don't know why. If you see a non-main character, I just don't draw them. So like there's a guy taking a photo. I think the guy who's like the referee at the first fight, like they don't matter. Like you don't need to see their face. You don't see their like the only people who matter are the kids, basically. It's their world. I did it in Louis Strauss too, I think, with adults. I think I did the same thing with adults, and which was another free comic book I did. I think I did the same because like when it's the kids flashback, like adults don't matter unless they matter, and then I'll show them. But yeah, I wanted to not show anything but adults. It was sort of like, or I wanted to show no adults. I mean, but there's just certain like someone's taking the pictures. You know what I mean? Like there are certain places there had to be adults, and I was like, So like you never see Don's dad, though. Especially he's involved. He gives him the tux. He has a really great punishment in the beginning of 3. And you don't see Sam's parents, but they talk. You see them talking, and they're very concerned for their daughter's well-being, which I love. I also like that because like when Don goes to pick up Sam to go to karate prom, it's not called karate prom, it's just called prom, but it becomes karate prom. And the dad is like doing that thing. Like, I don't know if you guys ever had that experience. It's the worst. Where you're meeting the parents and waiting for the other person to show up.
Yeah. Oh,
you don't have
God.
you don't have them shielding you. It's the worst. It's the worst. But I love that bit. Yeah, no adults. Adults suck. It's not for them. It's karate prom.
My dad liked to do bits. Like, so when I wasn't there, like my dad was in the military, and so he had like sharpshooter things, and he's like, I have something to show you. Literally every dude, I have something to show you. That's my sharpshooter pin from the from the Marines. And I'm just
and my rifle's under the bed right now.
Yeah, real charmer. My dad.
Yeah, well, you gotta let people know that there's going to be repercussions for their actions. I think it's very important. My daughter
was heard loud and clear. No second dates in high school.
I'm not big at imposing, but I was like, what could I do? I was like, what if I just did like post-apocalyptic hillbilly? Like they show up and I just have like torn overalls and like a bat with nails in it. I didn't do that. I just glare at them. That has no effect on teenagers. That's what I've learned. Just glaring as an adult and trying to be like, don't touch her. Doesn't work, I've learned.
It turns you into a real weird adult. I'm like a weird adult. It's good though. I'm having a great time.
Could have the second dates.
I don't know, maybe.
Dad knew they weren't the ones. He's like, these aren't the ones.
No.
The comic is for the teens, is about the teens, and yet we also said it's totally all ages, and we definitely believe it is an all ages comic. Anybody can pick this up and enjoy it.
So, yeah.
We certainly did. I guess based on how this sort of just poured out of you, you weren't really thinking too much about audience and marketing for this book. But then once it's, with First Second, do you think about it at all, or is that just their problem?
I think once it moved, I mean, there was definitely curses. There was definitely curses in the original one, though less curses. And Schweitzer, who ended up coloring it and who's my best friend and virtual studio mate, I think he loves like all ages stuff. Like that's his wheelhouse. So he's like, you got to take this out. And I'm like, who cares? Like, I think it's funny. That's how I talked when I was in high school. So there's definitely curses at the beginning, and those curses came out. There's kind of a couple spicy bits that I thought maybe for a second would take out. They're insinuated spicy bits, kissing shenanigans, if you will. That there's a couple bits I kind of was surprised that no one was like, maybe we should reword this a little bit. But it's in there. It's a little spicy. There's some innuendo.
Grip strength is mentioned.
What did grip strength?
Grip strength.
Listen, that's when she's holding his hand, though. She's holding his hand and she won't over let go. And then
She also
later
can hold her breath for a long time. I think this
yeah,
girl is
those aren't
wonderful.
innuendos though. She's just trained. She's just trained for any situation. The grip strength. Here, I love that bit. I don't want to because it's like in the book, but where she's like, "Oh, I've been doing these new exercises and I've been practicing my grip strength." And she holds his hand, and you're like, "Oh, that means she's never gonna let you know what I mean." Like it's implied, like she never has to go. But at the end of that fight, her grip strength wins the fight for her.
Yeah.
Like the thing that we mentioned at the beginning, and I love that. I love when you set something up for later. Yeah. So no, I you know what? It wasn't like I was. Here's the thing. I don't know if teens even buy like that's not a viable market. I don't think. And I think most of the kids who bought YA books have transferred to manga. If I'm going to be completely honest, so I don't think I'm getting it right where they want it. Also, I think maybe it's a little too sweet for a teen. If I was going to be honest in that regards too, it's maybe too sweet and naive for a teen who wants something more gritty in their karate prom. It's uplifting and it's optimistic. They don't like that. These teens, they like to grouse is what they like to do.
Yeah, I wonder. Like to me, I feel like the audience right before, like the pre-teen audience, I think will be really strong for Karate Prom. And you have,
but they don't care about prom.
Well, they do though. That was when I cared the most about Prom.
Oh, okay. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
But like you've also with First Second, you are now more in a book market with Karate Prom than some of your other comics, and so there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, it'll be like that's. I mean, that was the point. You know what I mean? Like that was the point of why to do this book with them. We always just want more readers, and the thing is, like I hope that Karate Prom isn't like a Mars Attack situation, which is one of my best books in my opinion, where people go, my fans go, I don't want to read Mars Attacks. Like you're missing out. But I think Karate Prom is
loved your Mars Attacks. I
loved
it.
I think I love it. If only they published it. If only they printed that book. If only you could get it anywhere. That'd be interesting. So I hope the people who read even over this last year as sort of my star has risen for lack of a better term. My Q rating went up with Peacemaker and I Hate This Place and Marvel. I hope they read it because I think they'll love it. I think everyone who loves Kyle Stark will love this. And there's sort of I think there's like a nostalgia because it feels 80s. It feels like an 80s high school thing. And I love those. I adore them. I'm a John Hughes guy all the way through. What if there's more karate in John Hughes? I think maybe he missed the mark there, but that's okay. So I think there's the thing is like it feels familiar, and that's kind of one of the things I always try to do is like make something that hasn't been seen before, but it feels very familiar. So it's not niche or weird when you go, I don't know if I want to read the book about the ex-basketball player fighting Dracula's head. It's like, no, you'll like it. It'll feel very familiar. It'll feel like something you've done before, but in a new way. And you'll like it. You'll definitely like it. So fingers crossed. I mean, that's the thing with the audience. Like, audience is tough ever. Like you almost, and that's the thing about this is it's kind of seeking it. It kind of searches for an audience, which my other stuff doesn't. It's like either you like fun stories or you don't. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting. I don't like to do that. I have no interest in that. I have no interest of going, let me write something for a particular market. And like I was saying about that familiar, I'm rambling, but I'm not. Like that's the familiarity. Like Schweitzer and I bounce a lot of ideas off each other, and I'm always going, make the thing you want, yes, but also consider normal human beings will be reading. So like maybe those 3 pages of things that only interest you make 1 page. You know what I mean? Like you reduce it and try to think about how an audience will read it and what do we want if we want everyone to read it. And then in a perfect world, like this is it's Last Ronin. You know what I mean? It's whatever. It's the most popular book of the year. That's what you want. But if you write something that's extremely niche, unless it's revolutionary somehow, like that's not going to happen. So you do consider that there is an audience, but the audience I'm writing for is, people who are me in many ways, with better taste, hopefully. So like, yeah, you get what I'm saying. You see what I'm saying here. I could ramble at length.
For me, the thing, like, yeah, there isn't swears. And the entendre are double. You know what I mean? Like, yes. But to me, the thing that is unrelentingly uncensored Kyle Starks is like your slaps, that like how hard you go with the slapstick fight choreography. I feel like it really delivers and is genuinely like so funny. Like the spaghetti arms moment, that's how I'm gonna put it. I was just like, man, I would read 9 pages of the like spaghetti arms. Like I just thought it was so funny and perfect. So I feel like, the Kyle Starks reader who goes like, oh, but this one is for kids, would still enjoy how hard you really deliver on the actual fight choreography. I think it really
Yeah.
curves.
I've always taken fight choreography far too seriously, and I continue to do so here in Karate Prom.
Yeah.
Another conversation I had recently, someone was talking about, because I think there's two ways to do fight. I think comics, there's two ways to do it. You do it Kirby style, which is very in vogue right now because we only have 20, which is like it's two scenes. And Kirby, of course, it was so electric in both of those panels, like you could do it. But for me, and still, even as I've done this for a while and I get older, like fights, what happens in a fight is just like anything else in a story. Like it furthers the story. You don't just have a fight to have a fight. You have a fight either as a climax in which the hero wins, or you do it to say something about these characters, or to set something up later. And for the books that I've drawn, because I'll give myself 20 panels a page to do what needs to be done. I think it's very clear. Sex Castle, Kill Them All, Old Head, Karate Prom. Like the fights are important, and I still do now because I want to see a whole fight. If I see a fight, I want to see a whole fight. But it's just like anything else. As in a series, in a comic book direct market series, you have 20 pages. So it's like, what's going to be in, what's going to make it, what's not. In Pine and Merrimack, one of the characters is an ex-MMA fighter, so there has to be fights. But luckily, the sort of construct for that is that he's a professional fighter. The fights are very brief. Like, but I want to see him. I want to see how he wins. Right. That's important to me. I want to see greatness in action if that's what it is. But for Karate Prom, I think if you look through it, like everything tells something about these characters, and sometimes they vocalize it. They very clearly vocalize it. Don is smart. He's not the best fighter, but he's a clever fight tactician, and he's big on defense. Like he's good at not getting hit, or he's good at taking hit, one of the two. And you can see that as it goes on. It's like, oh, he in volume 2 or the second part, you go, oh, that guy can take a hit and get back up, even though you get spaghetti arms, which has one of my favorite, my favorite sound effects. I think it's like BEP. I think it's whatever the word is. It's very funny to me. So I think fights tell a story, and it's not just the spectacle of a fight. Though I'm an 80s action guy, I love the spectacle of a fight. But I think if you look through all my things, the fights serve a function of saying something about this character or setting up something for the last fight, right? So you're still storytelling. I like to see a whole fight. That's just me. I like to see a whole fight, and it's nice to get to do these sort of longer form things because I get to do more character stuff. I get to do the throwaway bits, and I strive to keep that in the stuff I do now because I think the character bits and the fights are still very important. I think they're the things that they fill it out. You know what I mean? They make it different from other things. But it's like you can only ask a professional comic artist to draw so many panels. Like they are doing their job, and I'm just not going to have them do. I think I average 8 panels a page in this book. I'd have to look again. I know for Old Head it was like 7.5 to 8, and I don't ask an artist to draw more than 6 unless it's like it's hard times. Like we have to get one more panel, and I just won't ask them to do it. So that limits it so much over the course of a book because you're going 120. I'm doing 160. I'm doing another 40 panels worth of action or worth character stuff, and so yeah, fights, dude. I think fights, like I said, I think everything tells us everything should exist to serve a function. And with a fight, sometimes the function is, wow, they're cool. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I want to see Iron Man fight.
Yeah.
I want to see Iron Man fight. Like if you have the Hulk show up and I don't see the fight, even if the fight is over quick because he's the Hulk, I want to see the fight. Just give me don't give me the and there was a great brouhaha in the captions, and there was a tremendous conflict of which the world was never the same again. And you see them all sort of like George Perez, who's a goat, vaguely sort of fighting in the air, but not like I don't know, man. I think everything should serve a function of the story. And I love a fight. I love choreographing a fight. I wish I was a little bit better at it. I wish I had like not the fight. Like I wish I was a little more clever about it. Ooh, here's a set piece, or like I should think about the set piece in advance, or I just don't do that. I'm always in the moment. I'm like, and now they fight. What does the fight need to say? That's always what it is.
I love that because that's like the same thing that makes great musicals great is when the songs actually move the plot forward or teach you something. So like what makes Kyle Stark's fights great is what makes musicals great. I don't know. Yeah. I love that.
I think action movies are literally musicals, but it's fights instead of songs, and that's what I love action movies and despise musicals. It's like, but they're just the same. I'm like, I don't like songs. I like punches. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I like punches.
One of the lessons that I'm going to take from Karate Prom, where it's just like, this is going to be a line that I think about for the rest of my life, is don't fight her fight, fight your fight. Where
Yeah.
the idea of like sometimes you go into something and you go like you play their game, like you're in conflict, but you volunteer to fight about what they're fighting about almost, where the
Yeah.
idea of going like, well, like move towards the outcome that you want sometimes. Like
Yeah.
if you guys are in conflict about something, take your side. How did you come up with that line? And is that a line that you use? Is that like a lifeline?
I don't think that's anything I've ever said before. It sort of becomes very 80s accidentally sort of like a class thing that it's not at all. I think it's just about people being different.
Mm-hmm.
But that particular bit is like we introduce a very evil character who's one of Don's ex-girlfriends who is a better fighter than Sam, who is the best fighter. And also, that's just really a moment for someone. I think that's what love. I think there's so many things that I don't say like, this is what love is, but something that is love is when someone you care about goes, "I have crushing doubts," and the person who's meant for them will go, "But listen, you've got this." One, and two, just keep being you. Like keep being you. But I think it also is like the sort of like caveat to that is like Sam's Sam's done a good job of being a human being. You know what I mean? Like she is good at this thing and she's having doubts. And for someone to be like, dude, you got this, I think is really what it is. But I also think exactly what you said is very much sometimes we're fighting the wrong fight and you'll never win that fight. But it's like if you've striven to be good or to be excellent at something, like don't forget how you got here. Like don't forget how you got here. We can always be better, and even that's in the book because Sam gets a new sensei, um, which levels her up because she's like, I just got to be better than I was last time. That was kind of one of the lessons she learned. I think she knows she got lucky in some ways in that fight. If they were in a different building, she probably wouldn't have won, right? Like that's legit. But yeah, I think like that's like it's all, and I think also like in that line is like often we find ourselves in arguments that aren't our arguments. They're that person's argument, and we're trying. It's like you just got to sometimes go, well, I can only fight my battle. You know what I mean? I can only fight my fight.
Yeah. Just
Yeah, we love
considering
that.
like what's my outcome actually is
Yeah,
just like such
what's
a
the end
good thing to
result?
do.
What's the end result that I want? What's the one that's best for me? Uh, but yeah, that's the gist of it. But I think very much the purpose of that is for Don to be like he just has such faith in her. He just like has unbelievable faith. Like he knows it'll be good. He knows like probably because she beat him up already. Like just like probably like 2 days earlier. But I think like I said, he sees the best in people, and he knows like if she is her, who's the best person he can imagine, like why would she not win? But I think it's important advice. It's important advice. It's full of it. It's full of important advice.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
conflicts.
I feel like we've proven with this conversation that Karate Prom is not only an event for Brad and Lisa, but is an event for any comic book couples counseling listener. Like this really is in our podcast's wheelhouse. And we're so excited that it's, I love that you're with For a Second now. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think that your readership that you've already assembled around you will dig the heck out of this book, but I think you're going to gain some new readers as well. So yeah, we just need this book out.
I hope June something.
Yeah, June something. We'll have it in the
June 7th.
the notes.
June 7th. June
June
7th, I
7th.
think. It's coming out. And it's my second, it's hardcover and softcover. So it's Daddy's second hardcover. He's very proud of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. And I can't wait for all those people then to read like Assassination, which is just full of like violence and profanity, and be like, well, we like the other one.
I don't know.
This
Like
one seems a little too much.
They're gonna level up to Sex Castle.
I
Yeah.
feel like since we spoke about Old Head a few years ago, you've mentioned it, your star has risen. You've got
Yeah.
so much going on right now in comics. And also now they're making movies on Kyle Stark's books.
Listen, nothing's ever going to get nothing's ever going to get made. I've optioned everything that I own except for Old Head. At some point has been optioned or has been multiple time optioned. Kill them all. They've had a script and now they have a second director attached to it. So you're like, oh, well, that's big news, except for we already had one. So what does that even mean? It means nothing. Sex Castle had a script. Rock Candy Mountain, nothing really happened. Rock Candy Mountain, we're doing a collected edition that comes out, I think, May,
Yeah.
which I'm really excited about. Of all of my past books, Rock Candy Mountain has benefited the most from my current whatever success or whatever, which is dope because I love like Sex Castle and Rock Candy Mountain. I love all those books. I love all my books. All the books I've drawn, I love. Kill them all. We just optioned Legend of Ricky Thunder, which was unpublished. Nothing will ever happen. Nothing will ever happen. It's always nice. It's always nice. The only hope you go, I hope someone buys some books. You know what I mean? I hope they read some books because that's the whole point. The whole point is just for these stories to be consumed. And we'd like a bunch of money, but I just want people to read my stories. That's what I made them for, and I say that sincerely. And then I get to do this for a living, which is pretty great. Yeah. So nothing's gonna happen. Here's one day it'll happen, and I'm gonna be very Alan Moore about it. I'll be like, did you see it though? It wasn't my thing. It wasn't my thing. And they'll be like, that's fine. I won't give the money. I won't give the money away though. I'll keep it, but I will be very grouchy about it. I won't be excited.
I'm really looking forward to that. I want that to happen because again, like that's the one thing you can't really replicate cinematically is the art of Kyle Starks.
Yeah. Oh, I think you could. Here's the thing. I think you could, but here's what I've learned. And this is like, oh, listen to the grouchy, successful guy. It's like, I'm in an unfinished business. I'd like to say that again. There's my luggage. There's dog stuff. You know what I mean?
We can attest to it.
Right next to me is what I've learned from the experience of having things being optioned, that when I get a script, it's not my thing. I don't know what they want. I don't know what they liked, that they take it away. So it's one of those things where to date, it won't be my thing. And I've kind of always known that would be the case, because people like to middle manage. This is why people are like, oh, I'm going to tangent around a little bit, is that probably during the pandemic, maybe people were like, you should just be writing, like you should get Hollywood stuff because it pays so much more. And it's like, it does pay so much more. I'm saying with huge eyes, like you wouldn't believe. I did a 30-second Rick and Morty spot for a commercial that never got used. And they paid me 30 seconds, or no, it was a minute and a half. It was 1.5 pages. 1.5 pages worth of work paid me more than I made for a year of writing Rick and Morty. 1.5 page. So the money difference is so huge. But the thing is that I'm so type A, and the idea of doing something that I want to exist, then simply not existing, right? Then simply not happening or being rewritten and collaborated. I don't like that. Right? Just a collaborating. Like I look Karate Prom, it's just me. And Schweitzer comes in and makes it magical with his art, with his colors. It's just me. I get to do whatever I want. It's going to be exactly my vision. It's going to be exactly what I want. It's not hindered by concerns about what the other person is able to do, what they're willing to do, how much time they have. I get to do whatever I want. And so in Hollywood, that's not the case. Like it's not an editor and an artist and a colorist just add. It's not an editor and an artist. It's the producers, it's the director, it's the staff, the actor wants to change. I can't imagine that. And so the thing that I've always known, and I felt from the beginning, every time we've done an option and I've gotten a script and it's like, what is this? Is that they can't change my book. So they can do whatever they want. Like, and they're going to. I don't know why they're like, let's give this guy money for this idea and then not really do it. This isn't just me. I promise, talk to anyone. Talk to almost anyone. Not Robert Kirkman. Don't talk to him. Even though they did change, I mean, they changed his thing
changed
too,
a
right?
lot. Yeah.
But it's still, I mean, like Invincible is like Invincible. You know what I mean? Like there's you change little things. If only everything was like the new Avatar or whatever, where it's like, oh, it's kind of, or One Piece. You're like, oh, it's a thing, but it's not quite the thing. We'd all be fine, but they're not going to pay service to me presently. And who knows when the first thing gets made, maybe that guy is like, just make the thing. But the one thing I've learned is I don't know what they want. They don't want the thing. And the same thing when you look at the Marvel movies. Like, why are none of them like the goodest thing they could have been? Shout out to James Gunn doing Supergirl. Like, hopefully very similar to Supergirl, because that book is so good, right?
Yeah.
It's a weird deal, man. It's a weird deal. And I always said, like, well, you know, if someone wants to put my kid through college, like, more power to them. They can't change my baby. They can't ever change my baby. And so I just hope whatever they do make, people read that book. And I hope they like that and read a bunch more books. And hopefully a bunch of them also just become huge comic fans and start reading a bunch of books, because God knows we need more comic book readers.
Yeah, amen to that.
I love that. Like the Hollywood thing is not your fight. Why would you work real hard to win it? Because that's not your fight. Your fight is making your books. and having people read them.
Yeah, I'm just trying to tell stories and as purely as I can. And as we said, like collaboration is hard for me. Some people like glow in that, like they're like, this is so great. I don't like it. It's very hard for me because like I'm doing 8 panels. Now, mind you, I draw poorly. Like I don't draw very good. But it's like I would never ask that for someone else because I know how hard they're working. I know how hard it was for them to get 20 pages out in 6 to 8 weeks. So it's like I can't, even asking for 6 feels bad sometimes. But there's like why won't you? Like why is it so hard? There's all these things of just collaboration, but I'm so type A, and I want the thing to be the thing, and that's with editors. Like trying to get an editor to understand your vision is hard. All of it's hard. It's hard, and I've the last couple of years, that's when my thing is like I want to be a better collaborator, and I've been lucky because 2023 was basically people who just did what I said. So it was like the best kind of collaboration. It's like Steve Pugh and Peter Kowalski and Fernando Passarin and Hervas on. They just drew the scripts, you know what I mean, which is what you want. But like Fran Galan on Pine and Merrimack that guy's an artist and he's changing things to be more interesting visually. And so I have to adapt a little bit. And I'm all for it. Fran's allowed to do it. No one else is. No one else is allowed to do it. And like, Erica and Erica Henderson and Chris Schweitzer, when I worked with them, they would add panels. And it's like, yeah, I would have added those panels, but I'm not going to ask you to do them, right? Like they just get the same way we're on the same board. So the collaboration is hard. And the idea of it's 2-part. One, you're not even collaborating at some point in that industry. At some point, it's just taken away from you. I hate that. And 2, I can always make my story. Like I can always do Karate Prom. I can always do it for free. I can always do a Kickstarter. I can always just make my own thing. There's no, and that's a privileged situation. Both that I could afford to do it if I had to, but also like I can afford the artist who's me. You know what I mean? Like the what is the word, like sink in cost or whatever is 0 for me. So if I just love a story and no one wants to make it, I can just make it. And so that's very freeing too. So Hollywood, all that stuff, like the money's great. Listen, if I was a smarter person, I would do it for 3 years and come back to comics and have enough money to not care about anything. But I just hate the idea of making something and not existing. Or having an idea not exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hate that.
Well, cash those checks, Kyle.
There's not any.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us and talking Karate Prom. This is you've got so much going on in the very near future. I think you'll be back on the show pretty darn soon too, if we have our way.
Yeah, I have a suspicion several pretty exciting things are going to be announced this year that I'm pretty stoked about how people will react. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of San Diego stuff.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
my suspicion, which means I have to go to San Diego.
Well, we'll be there. We can say hello.
Hey, that's my suspicion. There's at least 2 things that I think are going to be announced this year, but it might not be announced till next year. I doubt that though. Comics are weird. Like you're like, why haven't we already mentioned? I have 3 books that are almost done that haven't been mentioned. They're like Barfly, it comes out in July, and I'm like, why are we talking about Barfly? It comes out in July. I have 3 books you guys haven't even announced yet as potentially coming out. Oh well, that's comics. Comics are fun.
Love it.
It's a great industry. We love it.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
There we go. That's the ending.
That was such a great, if somewhat vulnerable for me, conversation with Kyle Starks. One way that I feel like I relate to Don is that in the context of karate, he feels a little bit more confident than just like in general high school stuff. Like, for example, like for me, I was a choir kid, and even though I hated going to prom and homecoming because I was so tremendously uncomfortable, when we would do choir events and we would have choir dances, I would try more things. I would dance with boys, I would dance with my friends, and I just felt generally better about myself. I think because I had proven myself as like a good singer to all of these people, like I got into district choir, these people respect me, and then all of a sudden I am just this completely different person that I would be to the general high school population.
Yeah, I think for me, that was probably my time at Barnes & Noble. I feel like I really figured out who I was while I was selling books to the public. And that allowed me to feel more comfortable about my own talent and my own enthusiasms and passions in life. And once that comfortability came in, I was able to like look outside the world and find somebody like you.
Yeah.
But it is always a treat to talk to Kyle Starks. I really love the comics that he does. I would highly encourage everyone to join his sticker club.
Yeah.
We are both members of the sticker club so that we get 2 times the amount of stickers from Kyle every month.
We got tired of just fighting over who got to keep what.
Right. And in the notes of this episode, you can also see a commission that we made from Kyle. We asked Kyle to do us.
Yeah.
So he's done a Kyle Starks version of Brad and Lisa from Comic Book Couples Counseling, and that hangs on the walls of our home. And we love it so much.
We do.
That is going to bring us to the end of this week's show. Next week, we are going to have Patrick Horvath back on the podcast, and we are going to do an ultimate conversation of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. You are not going to want to miss that. The series just wrapped up last week. The ending was totally satisfying, and it was fun to talk to Patrick about his nerves regarding how his audience would react to those last 2 issues in particular, because it goes in a direction that maybe people were not anticipating if they'd only read the first issue. After that, we are going to talk to Dan Waters and Ram V about Creature from the Black Lagoon, out now from Skybound. And yeah, that's the future of Comic Book Couples Counseling.
So bright, gotta wear shades.
Yeah. Also, of course, on May 19th, we are screening 1989's Batman, a 35th anniversary screening of that at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester, Virginia. 4 o'clock, co-sponsored as always by 4 Color Fantasies, and we will have a virtual introduction by Michael Uzlan, the man who got that movie made.
Okay, Brad, it is time to do our closing plugs, but I feel compelled to do kind of like a John Hughes ending where we each tell people where the characters of this episode end up. Kyle Starks becomes tremendously famous, gets millions of dollars from selling all of his scripts, and he builds a house on top of his house, and his dog lives forever. Brad and Lisa stay married. They keep plugging away at Comic Book Couples Counseling, and actually that becomes their fame, and we become the podcasters laureate of the United States.
Yeah, and we save the planet at least 7 times.
At least. Where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
You can find me on most social medias at MouthDork. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, you can send them to Aaron Prescott at A Cool Hand Fluke. And if you have some words of affirmation for our radical banner art and show posters, send them to Karen Chapp at Karen_X-Men fan. Lisa, where can our listeners send the words of affirmation to you?
I'm always accepting words of affirmation at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Audible, Apple Podcasts, or whatever app you prefer. We're everywhere. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join our Patreon, where you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You could visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, or follow us on all the socials at CBCC Podcast.
You can give us the gift of 5 stars on Audible or Apple Podcasts, and if you'd like to do an active service, why not write a review of the show while you're there?
Yes, please.
We're fluent and receptive in all 5 love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod.
So until next time, friends, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Doopy doopy.